Did you know that tattoos have basically been illegal in South Korea until now? That's right, one of the most modern countries and modern cities, Seoul, in the whole world, is finally making a big change. They're legalizing tattooing. Here's the thing, the law change is not quite as simple as it sounds. Tattoos in Korea have a very complicated history. Even though it may now be legal on paper, the culture around them is still filled with stigma and restrictions. Today, I'm going to explain exactly what changed. I'm going to explain why tattoos were illegal in the first place, how Korean society actually feels about tattoos, and what this means for both Koreans and foreigners going forward. So let me explain why tattoos were even illegal in the first place. In South Korea, tattoos have typically been associated with crimes and gang activity. If you had tattoos, especially big tattoos, or you're fully covered in tattoos, you would immediately be associated with crime, with criminal activity. Because of this, tattoos are seen as socially unacceptable, rebellious, and just overall a bad thing to a lot of people. Here's the crazy part. Under Korean law, tattooing has been classified as a medical procedure. This means only licensed doctors are able to tattoo, at least until now. So unless you went to a hospital to get your tattoo, technically it was illegal. And let's face it, nobody has been going to the hospital to get their tattoos here. The law hasn't really stopped people. There's a massive underground tattoo scene here in South Korea. Some of the best tattoo artists, some very incredible tattoo artists coming out of Seoul. The estimates say there are over 20,000 tattoo artists here in Korea, operating unlicensed, all taking some risk to do their job. By the way, if you don't know, I am a tattoo artist. I was a tattoo artist back in the US, in New York, and traveling around tattooing. I haven't tattooed here in Seoul because of the rules, because of the law. I haven't even thought of it. I stopped tattooing around 2 years ago when I left the US, went to Thailand, went to Malaysia, and I haven't tattooed. I sold my tattoo machine to get money to survive and, support myself. But now that this is, becoming legal here in Korea, and because it's quite a thriving tattoo scene and culture, even though it's a bit underground, I'm definitely now considering to tattoo again here in Seoul. Tattoos are honestly very popular with young people here. If you walk around in many neighborhoods, any of the, I'd say, popular nightlife neighborhoods, neighborhoods with young people around universities, Hongdae, Itaewon, actually a lot of areas in Seoul, you will see young people full of tattoos. Even so, there's still a huge stigma. So places like gyms and especially saunas, you could still maybe get denied entry. It's still quite, taboo. And so not completely culturally accepted at this point. So what has actually changed? Well, the Korean Constitutional Court ruled that tattooing should not only be allowed to be done by medical professionals. They ruled that it shouldn't be a medical procedure. Basically, they recognize tattooing as an art form, like it is, and not something only for doctors to do. This means that tattoo artists can register legally and tattoo professionally without taking any risks and without doing something illegal. But it doesn't mean everything is so simple and easy. The government is actually still working on the regulations. It's not fully clear just yet what regulations are going to be in place, how strict it will be to get your tattoo license. There still may be some strict regulations when it comes to sanitation and maybe registering your business, something like that, so people aren't doing it out of their homes. So yes, tattoos are now legal in Korea, but the actual details about registration and the process is still being figured out. So why now? Why is this just changing after all these years? Well, Korea has a huge underground tattoo culture, like I mentioned. There's millions of people getting tattooed. There's millions of people who have been tattooed. And for them to just, pretend that that's not happening, it's a little bit, it doesn't make much sense. Also, a lot of Korean celebrities, a lot of Korean athletes, they play a huge role in this. You see K-pop idols, people from BTS with tattoos. You see famous singers, Jay Park, full of tattoos. Even if they sometimes have to cover them when they're on TV or certain appearances, people know that they have them. Everybody knows. This cultural shift really pushed tattoos into the mainstream. Also, there is international pressure here. People outside Korea are shocked when they hear that tattoos are illegal here. You see tons of artists on Instagram. You see some huge, massive artists on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and they're coming out of South Korea. They're based in South Korea. So the average person is a bit shocked when they find out that it's not even legal. So in a way, this change is just Korea catching up with the rest of the world. Now, here's the interesting part. Just because tattoos are now legal does not mean it's immediately accepted by the entire culture and by all people here in South Korea. The older generations, especially, they still see tattoos as a bit of a dirty thing, very rebellious, and they're not going to just change their mind overnight. Maybe when they start to have family members, their grandchildren and things like that are actively participating and they're getting tattoos, yeah, maybe they're not going to like it. But this shift of legalization, it's going to steer things in that direction where the older generations are going to start to accept it more. And as the older generations die off, and now that it's legal, the generations to come and the current, let's say, millennials, people like me, slightly older than me, are not really going to think of it in such a negative way. Many employers definitely still take it seriously, and you have to cover yourself up. If you have a lot of tattoos, you need to make sure they're covered. Even if you're in an office job, it doesn't necessarily matter. You may have to cover your tattoos, especially things like teaching. For sure, you have to cover them up. If you're serving in the military, especially for Koreans, then it could pose a problem if you have tattoos. There's even cases where people have been questioned, people who have big tattoos, Koreans who have big tattoos, where they're questioned about, did you do this to avoid serving in the military? Because that's something that can happen. It's like, you have to serve in the military as a young Korean man. And maybe if they don't want to, maybe something they will do is get tattooed just to avoid that. And so that has been sort of a thing. That's definitely there's been cases of that. That being said, the younger generations are way more open-minded. They see tattoos as self-expression. They recognize tattoos as an art form. They're more accepting of other cultures, and they have a more, let's say, worldly view of things. And so for a while now, yeah, the younger folks have been getting tattooed and have been quite interested in getting tattoos. So what does this mean if you're a foreigner here in Korea? Well, it's definitely safer. Before, if you were getting a tattoo, you're traveling here, getting a tattoo, you were technically doing something illegal. You're going to an illegal shop. A lot of these shops are just in somebody's home, just somebody tattooing what they have their setup inside of the place that they live. And yeah, while this is common in somewhere like New York, where I'm from, in New York City, in Brooklyn, especially in Brooklyn, people are doing this quite frequently. There's unlicensed studios, full studios, which are not actually licensed, or people tattooing out of a Airbnb, people tattooing out of their house. It's common. I've done it. I did it for years. And it's just something that a lot of people do. It's a very DIY situation. But it's not like that in most places in the world. That's a very kind of uncommon thing. It's kind of known in the underground tattoo community that this is like a New York thing and like a Seoul, South Korea thing. Like, I heard about this being a thing in Korea back when I tattooed in New York. And it was surprising because it's not like that in many places. It's not really like that in Europe too much. It's not really like that in other states in America. Here, specifically in Seoul, it's known that there's this do-it-yourself kind of home tattooing culture that's been going on. So yeah, going forward, if you want to get a tattoo here, travel here to get a tattoo or whatever it is, it's much better because you're going to an official tattoo studio. Of course, people are still going to do it maybe the underground way at first. I think a lot of people will take a little time to transition into doing it in the right way. But, you can make that choice as somebody getting a tattoo here now. You have the option to, yeah, do it completely legally. This could really open things up for tattoo tourism in Seoul because there's such talented artists here. Like, I'm talking really next level talent, both artistically and with the actual technical part of tattooing. People here are exceptionally good, to a degree that I could never be. I'll just say that. So yeah, this could open up something cool to me because I love tattoos. I think it's interesting that people will travel here more so to get tattooed. People also won't be so afraid to put their work out there and to attach their face to their work on Instagram. Until now, people may hide their true identity, hide their face. They don't want to put their address of the studio out there. It's kind of hidden until you book with them. Now I think people are going to be a little less concerned about that, and it's going to help them a lot because now with social media, you really need to show some behind the scenes. You need to show your face. You have to give people a glimpse into who is behind the art. It's not just a computer, a robot. And now people here will feel more comfortable doing that. Personally, I think this is a really exciting change. I think it's just, it's my culture. It's what I'm used to. I know it's going to be weird to some people here, but I think it's just the modern way. It's kind of, like I said, catching up to what the rest of the world kind of has already done with tattoo laws and their tattoo culture. People were getting tattoos anyway, right? People were tattooing anyway. We should have a way for people to do it legally and be more safe with it because you do need to be careful. You do need to really know sanitation and how to do things properly, or you could cause a problem for somebody. So the more legal it is, the more regulations they have, the better. I also think it's going to take a long time for the stigma to change. Laws can change overnight, but people's opinions on something that has been going on for so long will not change overnight. For a while, you're still going to see this divide of the younger generation fully accepting it and loving it, and the older generation seeing it in a negative way. I want to know, what do you think? Do you think the stigma will fade pretty quickly, or do you think it will stick around for a while? And tell me, what do you think of tattoos personally? Do you judge people if they have tattoos? Do you see it as being dirty? Do you feel like somebody is a criminal? Do you look at somebody a different way? Let me know down in the comments. What do you think about tattoos? Next, watch my video where I talk about my quality of life here in Korea versus living in Malaysia. You can watch that right here.